Hello there. Thank you for clicking on this video. Your time is valuable, so we are super grateful that you are giving our little channel a chance. Any feedback is appreciated. Enjoy the story. The Brothers Grimm Fairy Tales. Jorinda and Jorindel. There was once an old castle that stood in the middle of a deep, gloomy wood. In the castle lived an old fairy. This fairy could take any shape she pleased. All the day long she flew about in the form of an owl, or crept about the country like a cat, but at night she always became an old woman again. When any young man came within 100 paces of her castle, he became quite fixed and could not move a step till she came and set him free, which she would not do till he had given her his word never to come there again. But when any pretty maiden came within that space, she was changed into a bird, and the fairy put her into a cage and hung her up in a chamber in the castle. There were 700 of these cages hanging in the castle, and all with beautiful birds in them. Now there was once a maiden whose name was Jorinda. She was prettier than all the pretty girls that were ever seen before, and a shepherd lad whose name was Jorindel was very fond of her, and they were soon to be married. One day they went to a walk in the wood that they might be alone, and Jorindel said, "We must take care that we don't go too near the fairy's castle." It was a beautiful evening. The last rays of the setting sun shine bright through the long stem of the trees upon the green underwood beneath, and the turtle doves sang from the tall birches. Jorinda sat down to gaze upon the sun. Jorindel sat by her side, and both felt sad, they knew not why. But it seemed as if they were to be parted from one another forever. They had wandered a long way, and when they looked to see which way they should go home, they found themselves at loss to know what path to take. The sun was setting fast, and already half of its circle had sunk beneath the hill. Jorindel on a sudden looked behind him and saw through the bushes that they had, without knowing it, sat down close under the old wall of the castle. Then he shrunk for fear, turned pale, and trembled. Jorinda was just singing. The ring-dove sang from the yellow spray, well-a-day, well-a-day. He mourned for the fate of his darling mate, well-a-day. When her song stopped suddenly, Jorindel turned to see the reason, and behind his Jorinda changed into a nightingale, so that her song ended with a mournful chug-chug. An owl with fairy eyes flew 3 times around them, and 3 times screamed, "Too, too, too." Jorindel could not move. He stood fixed as a stone, and could neither weep nor speak, nor stir hand or foot. And now the sun went quite down. The gloomy night came. The owl flew into a bush, and a moment after the old fairy came forth pale and meagre, with staring eyes, and a nose and chin that almost met one another. She mumbled something to herself, seized the nightingale, and went away with it in her hand. Poor Jorindel saw the nightingale was gone, but what could he do? He could not speak, he could not move from the spot where he stood. At last the fairy came back and sang with a hoarse voice, "Till the prisoner is fast, and her doom is cast. There stay, oh there stay, and the charm is around her, and the spell has bound her high away, away." On a sudden, Jorindel found himself free. Then he fell on his knees before the fairy and prayed her to give him back his dear Jorinda. But she laughed at him and said he would never see her again. Then he went her way. He prayed, he wept, he sorrowed, but all in vain. "Alas," he said, "what will become of me? He could not go back to his own home, so he went to a strange village and employed himself in a keeping sheep. Many times did he walk around and round as near to the hated castle as he dare go, but all in vain, or saw nothing of Jorinda. At last he dreamed one night that he would find a beautiful purple flower, and that in the middle of it lay a costly pearl. And he dreamed that he plucked the flower and went with it in his hands into the castle, and that everything he touched with it was disenchanted. And there he found his Jorinda again. In the morning, when he awoke, he began to search over hill and dale for this pretty flower, and 8 long days he sought for it in vain. But in the 9th day, early in the morning, he found the beautiful purple flower, and in the middle of it was a large dewdrop as big as a costly pearl. When he plucked the flower and set out to travel day and night till he came again to the castle. He walked nearer than 100 paces to it, and yet he did not become fixed as before, but found that he could go quite closely up to the door. Jorinda was very glad indeed to see this. Then he touched the door with the flower, and it sprang open. So he went in through the court and listened with his heart so many birds singing. At last he came to the chamber where the fairy sat, with the 700 birds singing in the 700 cages. When she saw Jorinda, she was very angry and screamed with rage, but she could not come within 2 yards of him, for the flower he held in his hand was his safeguard. He looked around at the birds, but alas, there were many gales, and how then should he find out which was his Jorinda? While he was thinking what to do, he saw the fairy had taken down one of the cages and was making the best of her way off through the door. He ran or flew after her, touched the cage with the flower, and Jorinda stood before him and threw her arms around his neck, looking as beautiful as ever, as beautiful as when they walked together in the wood. Then he touched all the other birds with the flower, so that they all took their old forms again, and he took Jorinda home, where they were married, and lived happily together many years. And so did good many other lads, whose men that had been forced to sing in the old fairy's cage by themselves much longer they liked. The travelling musicians. A honest farmer had once an ass that had been a faithful servant to him a great many years, but now was growing old and every day more and more unfit to work. His master therefore was tired of keeping him and began to think of putting an end to him. But the ass, who saw that some mischief was in the wind, took himself slyly off and began his journey towards the great city, for there, he thought, I may turn musician. After he had travelled a little while, he spied a dog laying by the roadside and painting as if he were tired. "What makes you paint so, my friend?" asked the ass. "Alas," said the dog, "my master was going to knock me on the head, because I am old and weak and can no longer make myself useful to him in hunting, so I ran away. But what can I do to earn my livelihood?" "Hurry back," said the ass. "I am going to the great city to turn musician. Suppose you go with me and try what you can do in the same way." The dog said he was willing, and they jogged on together. They had not been gone far before they saw a cat sitting in the middle of the road and making a most rueful face. "Pray, my good lady," said the ass, "what is the matter with you? You look quite out of spirits." "Ah, me," said the cat, "how can one be in a good spirits when one's life is in danger? Because I am beginning to grow old, and had rather lay at my ease by the fire than run about the house after the mice. My mistress laid hold of me and was going to drown me, and though I have been lucky enough to get away from her, I do not know what I am to live upon. Oh, said the ass, by all means, go with us to the great city. You are a good singer and may make your fortune as a musician. The cat was pleased with the thought and joined the party. Soon after, as they were passing by a farmyard, they saw a cock perch upon a gate, screaming out with all his might and main. Bravo, said the ass. Upon my word, you make a famous noise. Pray, what is all this about? Why, said the cock, I was just now saying that we should have fine weather for our washing day, and yet my mistress and the cook don't thank me for my pains, but threatened to cut off my head tomorrow and make broth of me for the guests that are coming on Sunday. Heaven forbid, said the ass. Come with us, Master Chanticleer. It will be better, at any rate, than staying here to have your head cut off. Besides, who knows, if we care to sing in tune, we may get up some kind of concert, so come along with us. With all my heart, said the cock. So they all four went on joyfully together. They could not, however, reach the great city the first day, so when night came, they went into the wood to sleep. The ass and the dog laid themselves down under a great tree, and the cat climbed up into the branches, while the cock, thinking that the higher he sat the safer he should be, flew up to the very top of the tree, and then, according to his custom, before he went to sleep, looked out on all sides of him to see that everything was well. In doing this, he saw afar off something bright and shining, and calling to his companion, he said, There must be a house no great way off, for I see a light. If that be the case, said the ass, we had better change our quarters, for our lodging is not to the best of the worlds. Besides, said the dog, I should not be the worse for a bone or two, or a bit of meat. So they walked off together towards the spot where the Chancellor had seen the light, and as they drew nearer, it became larger and brighter, till they at last came close to a house in which a gang of robbers lived. The ass, being the tallest of the company, marched up to the window and peeped in. Well, donkey, said the Chancellor, what do you see? What do I see? Replied the ass. Why, I see a table spread with all kinds of good things, and robbers sitting around it, making merry. That would be a noble lodging for us, said the cock. Yes, said the ass, if we could only get in. So they consulted together how they should contrive to get the robbers out, and at last they hit upon a plan. The ass placed himself upright on his standing legs, with his forefeet resting against the window. The dog got upon his back, the cat scrambled up to the dog's shoulders, and the cock flew up and sat upon the cat's head. When all was ready, a signal was given, and they began their music. The ass brayed, the dog barked, the cat meowed, and the cock screamed. And then they all broke through the window at once, and came tumbling into the room amongst the broken glass with the most hideous clatter. The robbers, who had been not a little frightened by the opening concert, had now no doubt that some frightful hobgoblin had broken in upon them, and screamed away as fast as they could. The coast once clear, our travellers as soon sat down and dispatched what the robbers had left, with as much eagerness as if they had not expected to eat again for a month. As soon as they had satisfied themselves, they put out the light, and each once more sought out a resting place to his own liking. The donkey laid himself down upon a heap of straw in the yard. The dog stretched himself upon a mat behind the door. The cat rolled herself up on the hearth before the warm ashes, and the cock perched upon a beam on the top of the house, and as they were all rather tired with their journey, they soon fell asleep. But about midnight, when the robbers saw from afar that the lights were out and that all seemed quiet, they began to think that they had been in a too great a hurry to run away, and one of them, who was bolder than the rest, went to see what was going on. Finding everything still, he marched into the kitchen and groped about till he found a match in order to light a candle. And then, spying the glittering fairy eyes of the cat for live coals, and held the match to them to light it. But the cat, not understanding this joke, sprung at his face and spat and scratched at him. This frightened him dreadfully, and away he ran to the back door. But there the dog jumped up and bit him in the leg. And as he was crossing over the yard, the ass kicked him, and the cock, who had been awakened by the noise, crowed with all his might. At this the robber ran back as fast as he could to his comrades, and told the captain how a horrid witch had got into the house and had spat at him and scratched his face with her long bony fingers. How a man with a knife in his hand had hidden himself behind the door and stabbed him in the leg. How a black monster stood in the yard and struck him with a club. And how the devil had sat upon the top of the house and cried out, "Throw the rascal up here!" After this, the robbers never dared to go back to the house. But the musicians were so pleased with their quarters that they took up their abode there, and there they are, I dare say, at this very day. Old Sultan. A shepherd had a faithful dog called Sultan, who was growing very old and had lost all his teeth. And one day, when the shepherd and his wife were standing together before the house, the shepherd said, "I will shoot the old Sultan tomorrow morning, for he is of no use now." But his wife said, "Pray let the poor faithful creature live. He had served us well a great many years, and we ought to give him a livelihood for the rest of his days." "But what can we do with him?" said the shepherd. "He has no tooth in his head, and the thieves don't care for him at all. To be sure, he has served us, but then he did it to earn his livelihood. Tomorrow shall be his last day, depend upon it." Poor Sultan, who was lying close by them, heard all that the shepherd and his wife said to one another, and was very much frightened to think tomorrow would be his last day. So, in the evening, he went to his good friend the wolf, and told him all his sorrows, and how his master meant to kill him in the morning. "Make yourself easy," said the wolf. "I will give you some good advice. Your master, you know, goes out every morning very early with his wife into the fields, and they take their little child with them and lay it down behind the hedge in the shade while they are at work. Now lie down close by the child and pretend to be watching it, and I will come out of the wood and run away with it. You must run after me as fast as you can, and I will let it drop. Then you may carry it back, and they will think you have saved their child, and will be so thankful to you that they will take care of you as long as you live." The dog liked this plan very well, and accordingly so it was managed. The wolf ran with the child a little way. The shepherd and his wife screamed out, but the Sultan soon overtook him and carried the poor little thing back to his master and mistress. And then the shepherd patted on his head and said, "Old Sultan has saved our child from the wolf, and therefore he should live and be well taken care of, and have plenty to eat. Wife, go home and give him a good dinner, and let him have my old cushion to sleep on as long as he lives." So, from this time forward, Sultan had all that he could wish for. Soon afterwards the wolf came and wished him joy, and said, "Now, my good fellow, you must tell no tales, but turn your head the other way when I want to taste one of the old shepherd's fine fat sheeps." "No," said Sultan, "I will be true to my master." However, the wolf thought he was in joke, and came one night to get a dainty morsel. But the Sultan had told his master what the wolf meant to do, so he laid wait for him behind the barn door, and when the wolf was busy looking out for the good fat sheep, he had a stout cudgel laid about his back that cumbered his lock for him finely. Then the wolf was very angry and called Sultan an old rag and swore he would have his revenge. So the next morning the wolf sent the boar to challenge Sultan to come into the woods to fight the matter. Now the Sultan had nobody he could ask to be his second, but the shepherd's older three-legged cat, so he took her with him. And as the poor thing limped along with some trouble, she stuck up her tail straight into the air. The wolf and the wild boar were first on the ground, and when they spied their enemies coming and saw the cat's long tail standing straight in the air, they thought she was carrying a sword for Sultan to fight with. And every time she limped, they thought she was picking up a stone to throw at them. So they said they should not like this way of fighting, and the boar lay down behind a bush, and the wolf jumped up into a tree. Sultan and the cat soon came up, and looking about, and wondered that no one was there. The boar, however, had not quite hidden himself, for his ears stuck out of the bush, and when he shook one of them a little, the cat, seeing something moving, and thinking it was a mouse, spread upon it, and bit and scratched it, so that the boar jumped up and grunted, and ran away, roaring out, "Look up in the tree, there sits the one who is to blame." So they looked up and spied the wolf sitting amongst the branches, and they called him a cowardly rascal, and would not suffer him to come down, till he was heartily ashamed of himself, and had promised to be a good friend again with Old Sultan. Thank you for listening. Please subscribe, and if you like it, please leave a comment. Bye for now.